My father was taught me.
If you've already found some awesome people to watch it with and your Soul Talk cards are ready to go, then guess what? It's time to begin. Kia ora.
To use your Feelings and Needs card, simply follow these 3 easy steps. Step 1. Lay the cards out on the table, or if you don't have a table, use the floor. If you don't have a floor, get one. Floors are important. Step 2. Ask the group to select at least one Feelings card and one Needs card that accurately expresses a situation they are faced with. Step 3. Encourage everyone to share openly with the group about their card selection. Now, sit back and watch the intimacy unfold. You'll never need to buy expensive chocolate biscuits again. Feelings and Needs cards are made by Soul Tour, so you know they're good. But wait, there's more. Try our new Te Reo Maori Feelings cards today.
I relied on interviews rather than 15 of a year. I've never worked.
Welcome back to Soul Talk Season 2. In the last session, we looked at trusting wisely. This time we're taking a look at another important relationship skill, how to forgive. There's a famous proverb that says, those who opt for revenge should dig 2 graves. In other words, forgiveness isn't good for anyone. It's damaging for those we can't or won't forgive, but it also damages us. It doesn't just damage individuals, but it impacts entire families and communities too. In fact, there are proven medical links between those who won't forgive and those who have ongoing medical issues like stomach ulcers, sleep issues, digestive problems, etc. In contrast, studies have found that the act of forgiveness can reap huge rewards for your health, lowering the risk of heart attacks, improving cholesterol levels, reducing pain and blood pressure, improving sleep, decreasing levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. Of course, the Christian Church has been aware since its beginning of the value of forgiveness. Both the Old and New Testaments refer repeatedly to the importance of it. Unfortunately, what that has often led to is a simplistic approach to forgiveness, a behavioristic approach that says you just have to forgive, without offering many practical suggestions on how to actually do it. If writing your offender's name down on a piece of paper and pinning it to a cross at church camp works, then that is great. But what happens when it doesn't?
I think looking back at my life, there's been a number of instances where I think I've been quite bullied. And as a result of that, I guess I carried around quite a lot of hurt, quite a lot of pain. One of those instances happened when I was quite a young boy, and at a time when I was quite vulnerable. So my father had just died, and there was this guy at my school his father was quite a prominent sports person. And for whatever reason, he targeted me as a little kid and just really, really picked on me. I just felt incredibly powerless. It was a horrible time in my life. But I look back now and there's been a number of people like that, both in the workplace and even in the church, unfortunately. I think one of the challenges is that often we don't get an opportunity to actually get justice for those things. So the resentment can just sort of sit there unless we kind of address those issues and revisit them and actually choose to put a line in the sand and forgive. These things can just be around all the time.
In my early childhood, I had a person in my life who was abused, and I witnessed it, not really knowing fully what was happening. And from that stemmed unforgiveness towards myself, towards my family, to people who should have protected, and towards the perpetrator. That there was a deep sense of, how can you do this? Why did you do this? And even questioning their humanity. The unforgiveness manifested in a lot of things for me. Anger towards myself, a big sense of injustice, of wanting to fight people, a defensiveness, kind of I'll get up on my soapbox really quickly when people would bring up certain topics and disconnect from from people around me and from God.
My life has just been one big mess from a very young age, and never really stopped, to be honest. I experienced physical abuse at 6 years old was probably the first time I felt that, and I was confused because prior to that it was just love and laughter and food and records playing of ABBA and all that kind of wonderful memories. But then after my 5th birthday, everything was just dark and painful. A lot of the emotions that I was left with was definitely confusion. There was a lot of resentment, anger. I don't like using the word much, but it was definitely hate for, especially the ones that were closest to me. With the trauma, I think the one word that really stands out to me was betrayal. I felt betrayed from my own blood. And it was a continual pattern from childhood right through adulthood. And so a lot of resentment, yeah, absolutely, that caused me to be quite bitter and desperate for solutions, desperate to be wanted, desperate to be loved, desperate to feel like I belong to someone, something of purpose. And went to different types of people, different spaces to seek that.
So why do so many people who know that forgiveness is important find it difficult, if not impossible, to forgive? Why do so many people either avoid forgiveness or try and fail at it? I think the main reason is that although they may know why it's a good idea to forgive, no one has ever taught them how to forgive. All they've got is willpower. The Bible says, I have to forgive, so that's what I have to do. So they try to forgive. They might go up for prayer about it. They might say the words, I forgive my dad, I forgive my mum, but a week later and nothing has changed. Often a big part of the problem is that for some people, the offence feels far, far too big to forgive. You may be able to make yourself forgive someone who jumped the queue, or took your car park, or ate that slice of cake you were saving for later. But what if you've been repeatedly bullied, or abused, or neglected? What if someone has harmed someone you love, like your children? In which case, getting enough willpower together to forgive them can seem impossible. Which is my first point. Jesus didn't say willpower would set us free. He said truth will set us free. We can't usually make ourselves forgive using brute force. Rather, forgiveness is a result of collecting, then dwelling on the right insights. For example, one insight that can help us find forgiveness is learning to stop taking offence so personally. This often comes by dwelling on the fact that when others hurt us, it says more about them and their mental health than it does about us. After all, why do bullies bully? Because they feel powerless and they want to feel powerful. Because they're afraid of being bullied themselves. Because they have pain they're taking out on someone else. If we can take the time to understand the pressure someone is under, it is so much easier to forgive. It doesn't justify what they've done. I'm not saying that what they did was right, but it is saying there's a bigger picture to consider. What I'm talking about here is empathy. It's about putting ourselves in their shoes and saying, if I had their life, would I be acting the same way or worse? Doing this enables us to step back and have a more objective rather than subjective response, helping us move towards forgiveness as we realize it was not actually about hurting us, it was about them and their brokenness. You might be interested to know that this is one of the key insights that enables us to forgive ourselves too. Understanding the pressures you were under at that time can enable you, the person you are now, to give grace to the person you were back then, back when you made those choices you're trying to forgive yourself for. Another insight that helps us forgive is understanding that forgiving someone doesn't automatically mean we have to trust them again. I've met lots of people who won't forgive because they think they'll be vulnerable to being hurt or ripped off once more. If I forgive them, I give them the power to just do it again. But actually, forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. We talked about trust in our last session, that trust is earned over time, and if it has been broken, it needs to be re-earned by our offender over time too. But forgiveness is different. Forgiveness is a gift we offer others, sometimes to people that are dead, sometimes to people from our past we don't see anymore. However, offering the gift of forgiveness to someone we will continue to see doesn't mean trusting them in that area again. For example, if you lend money to someone and they haven't paid it back when they said they would, you can forgive them, but you'll be foolish to lend them more money until they've re-earned your trust. We can forgive, but still put wise boundaries in place to make sure the hurt isn't repeated. A third insight that helps us find forgiveness is that forgiveness does not make a mockery out of justice. As humans, we often have a strong sense of justice, and simply forgiving someone can seem like they're getting away with what they've done, that it will be like saying what they did was okay, as if it didn't matter. But forgiving someone doesn't mean we just let them off the hook. There can be consequences. If someone owes you money, then it's okay to forgive them and still ask for that money back. If you have been wrongfully dismissed, you can forgive and still go to the tribunal so that they don't keep getting away with it. In other words, it's okay to protest the injustice, to enforce appropriate consequences, and still forgive. Some of you might be wondering, what about when there is no way to bring justice? Perhaps a friend has badly betrayed you, but you can't prosecute them for that. Or a family member has been lying to you, but there's no tribunal to haul them before. I believe this is where, if you have a Christian faith, you can make God your vindicator. A vindicator is someone who represents us and fights on our behalf. We have a God who wants to do that for us, and he will ensure that justice is done. I believe the very fact that we even have a sense of justice is because God gave it to us. It might seem at times like justice is taking too long, like people are getting away with evil. But we can be encouraged in the knowledge that a day is coming when all wrongs will be made right. To forgive another is to trust that God is just. It allows us to come off the defensive. We won't need retaliation, we can forgive instead. Here's a few final points about forgiveness. Firstly, forgiveness is usually a process, not a single event. The one role our willpower has is to choose to begin this process. I might not want to forgive, but I do want to. Secondly, because none of us are perfect, we should remember that we are also in need of forgiveness at times too. The person who has wronged you may be in trouble this time, but before long, the shoe will be on the other foot, and you'll be the one needing their forgiveness. Forgiveness is giving others the same grace that we ourselves depend on. Thirdly, as a counsellor, I occasionally find that a client comes to see me claiming to have been wronged by someone and saying they're struggling to forgive. But as we discuss what's happened, it becomes very obvious to me that actually they have partially or entirely created the problem themselves. If you're in trouble with your boss, it's possible that your boss has done something wrong, but it's also possible that you have. In this instance, your unforgiveness might just be a way of avoiding facing up to what you've done. In these cases, I find a better question than how do I forgive them is how have I contributed to the situation? Finally, our pain can become the source of our compassion. God can redeem any situation. He can use our greatest disappointments to build our character and show us what really matters in life. He can bring good out of tragedy if we look to him for that.
As a result of a lot of that bullying, which I guess started as a kid, but I saw it just continue in the workplace and even in the church, I became really aware of just how much resentment and unforgiveness was affecting my life. And it just took up so much emotional energy. And I just thought, I've just got to deal with this stuff and actually face it. A wise Christian leader once said, sometimes you've got to have a burial without a body. And I really took that on board. And so sometimes the people that have hurt me the most, I've just made a decision that actually, even though they're not in front of me, to let things rest, to bury the past and actually just move on. And that's just so freeing. And then secondly, just learning other people's stories. Bullies didn't become bullies overnight. they have their own stories as well. So yeah, learning how to understand how people got to where they are and why they behaved the way they did, that just gave me a huge insight. And I suppose it gives compassion to really understand people. There's something incredibly powerful about forgiveness. I think now I've just made a decision that, if I know there's unforgiveness in my heart, it's so worth the risk of actually stepping out and trying to set yourself free, but also often it can be setting that other person free as well. I think the tendency is to avoid those bruises and that pain. But, Jesus just makes it so clear that the truth will set you free. And I think that is part of our opportunity as Christians to be part of a whole beautiful process of reconciliation and healing through forgiveness. So, yeah, I just do not want to avoid it in my life. I want to confront it. It's so worth it.
Being given permission to forgive was a big part of my process. Someone had to say to me, it's okay to forgive this. It's okay to acknowledge this, and even to acknowledge not just myself and the people, but to acknowledge God. And that was a big part of the process, because then I could take it to my Heavenly Father and be like, God, why, where, who, what? And see it from His perspective and get an even deeper healing, because now not only was I just facing a human reality, I was facing a spiritual sort of journey of forgiveness and a reconciliation with my faith. My sense of justice is a human sense of justice, so it's going to be warped. It's going to have my own agenda. It's going to have my own intention. And God's intention of justice is coupled with love. So that's the purest form of justice. So I have to kind of release that to Him and be like, okay, you are going to do what is best, not just for me, not just for the circumstance, not just for the enemy, but for the whole thing. Yeah.
All the lies and the roles that I was playing, or the masks that I was wearing, got me to a point where I was quite suicidal. And I met a gentleman, missionary, that introduced me to Jesus, not just by through his preaching and stuff, but he will pick me up in the mornings and he'll take me out for anger management, because I got arrested and it was all part of the deal, 100 hours PD. Anyway, about from that circumstance, he would pick me up and he'll just share the gospel with me, and then things just started changing within my heart. I didn't just wake up to go with this guy to have my free bacon and egg muffin combo, but I was actually listening to what he was sharing. And then one day I decided, I think this is the one part of my life that I'm missing, and it's Jesus. Yeah. And though that was a pinnacle change in my life, trauma didn't stop. Grieving didn't stop. Betrayal didn't stop. It just carried on through, but he was a part of that journey. So faith throughout that time, dark times and dark decisions by other people that hurt me even more, I wasn't alone. And so even now, I'm still grieving what happened way when I was 6 years old. And that's all part of it. Grieving is to feel all the emotions that come, all the ugly ones, and just hug it, hold it for what it is, accept it, have my 5-minute sob, and then let it go. One of the things that I've learned about bitterness is that it's like you're drowning in a lake and you just can't breathe. And so I've been in the lake of bitterness. It's not a pleasant place to be in. And so one of the things that I love about forgiveness is that it frees me from that space. And I'm able to breathe. I'm able to be my authentic self. I'm able to outwork who God created me to be. But you can't do that when you're bitter. When you're bitter, you're restrained. You're drowning. You can't live. You're basically dying within yourself. Forgiveness frees you from that. And bitterness is totally the opposite. It just chokes up everything within who you are. You become this guy that nobody likes.
I hope that having heard these many stories and insights about forgiveness, you'll be willing to take a good look at your grudge list if you have one, and start that process of applying some of these insights to finding forgiveness. I promise you, you'll never regret doing that. Next time, we're looking at assertiveness. And I think it's safe to say that there would be less need to forgive if we were more proactive with our boundaries and assertiveness skills. See you then.